Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this presentation today. My name is Kirstyn Morley, and I'm a research coordinator with the Community University Partnership for the Study of Children, Youth, and Families at the University of Alberta in Edmonton. Today, I'll be speaking about a community-based research project that we are conducting in partnership with the town of Drayton Valley, which is exploring a really exciting and innovative program being spearheaded by the town. Drayton Valley's ZeroFee tuition program was developed as a response to economic recession in a community that is incredibly dependent on a single sector, that sector being oil and gas, for its economic strength. Because of that lack of diversification, Drayton Valley is really susceptible to any shocks to the oil and gas sector, such as collapses in oil prices, with impacts that can ripple across the entire community. So today I want to share some of the history of the program, how it can be part of creating an inclusive economy for a rural community, and some of our initial learnings about what it takes for an ambitious initiative like this to be successful. And while I'll be the one speaking today, I want to recognize that this is the work of a whole team of researchers and community practitioners, and I hope you'll have the opportunity to speak with some of our other team members in the breakout sessions. So our journey with our Drayton Valley partners began just over a year ago now, when the town approached the University of Alberta about offering courses and programming for the ZeroFee tuition initiative. At the same time, a funding call had gone out from Future Skills Centre for projects aimed at building resilience to withstand economic shocks. So after learning about the ZeroFee program, we were just really excited to explore the potential of an initiative like this to transform a community in the face of such huge economic challenges. And so last fall, we co-developed a funding proposal that ended up being successful and that has now launched us into the early stages of a 2-year research project exploring the ZeroFee program. So as community-based researchers, we really see our work as walking alongside and working with communities to create and use research evidence to improve programs, to inform policies, whether that's policies within an organization or at various levels of government, and ultimately to create better outcomes for communities. So we're really committed to this idea of research as practice, and that orientation informs the kinds of research objectives that are really guiding this project. So our first objective is we really want to capture how a model of ZeroFee education can be developed and sustained. So in doing this, we want to work closely with our partners at the town to ensure that learnings are informing their thinking about the program as it evolves, as well as being shared with others from across Alberta and Canada and even internationally to support other communities undergoing economic transitions. And second, we want to look at the initial outcomes of the program for students, their families, and the community. So the Drayton Valley story reflects challenges experienced by many rural Alberta communities with oil-dependent economies. And one of our research participants captures these challenges in the following quote. So they said, come 2015, 2016, with the oil and gas sector struggling, these opportunities became scarce and the community had to reskill themselves, look at other ways of finding employment and more stable employment as well. Don't get me wrong, the oil and gas industry is our backbone. It's our main economic contributor for years to come, for my lifetime for sure. But as a community, we need to see that if we can push a little bit past boom and bust with some other sectors and reskilling our community is important as well. So from this quote, you can see the kinds of tensions that are inherent in oil-dependent communities. So these are towns that exist because of oil, that in many ways owe their prosperity to oil, but are also dealing with the instability created by boom and bust cycles. So in the next slide, I want to dig a bit more into the Drayton Valley context and why there's a need to experiment with new economic strategies in this community and in others like it. So Drayton Valley has a relatively small population at just over 7,000 people, but more than 20% of that population is employed directly in oil and gas. And that compares with about 7% across Alberta and under 1% Canada-wide. And that number doesn't account for jobs that are created in supporting industries like healthcare and the service industry because of that employment in the oil and gas sector. So oil and gas are hugely important to this community, and it's a place where downturns in the oil and gas sector really do result in widespread job losses that are felt very deeply. Data from the last census indicate that from 2011 to 2016, the community saw a nearly 80% increase in unemployment, and that is generally attributed to disruptions in oil and gas. So when we talk about an inclusive economy, we're talking about creating opportunities for more widely shared prosperity particularly for those who have historically faced the greatest barriers to accessing economic opportunities and benefits. In Drayton Valley, median incomes are actually very high compared to Canada as a whole. So at about $100,000 a year, median incomes in the community are about 42% higher than the Canadian median. But this prosperity isn't shared equally, and we're seeing widening income inequality in the community. And this widening inequality is supported by research in other contexts that shows that during economic recessions, inequality increases, and those with low-paying and unstable jobs are the most likely to experience job disruptions, and they're less likely to have economic safety nets. And this pattern was borne out most recently during the COVID-19 pandemic. So in addition to targeted strategies at reskilling those previously employed in oil and gas jobs, it's also crucial that economic strategies increase opportunities for people who have been historically excluded from the wealth that those jobs created. So for example, people working in the service industries who tend to be disproportionately newcomers and women. So when we're working from an inclusive economy lens, we need to look at how economic opportunities and benefits are distributed among different groups within the community and what strategies might increase opportunities and access for those historically marginalized groups. So while Drayton Valley's zero-fee tuition program is unique in Canada, the inspiration for the program actually came from a community facing similar challenges across the world in Invercargill, New Zealand. While Invercargill is much larger than Drayton Valley with a population of about 57,000 people, the community was similarly reliant on a single economic sector. In their case, it was the dairy industry. And they faced a need to really diversify that industry to create more economic resilience in the community. So the zero-fee tuition scheme that has been offered at Invercargill's Southern Institute of Technology since about 2001 provides a more established model that Drayton Valley can learn from and also adapt to the unique context of a more rural community. Compared to Invercargill's 20-year history, Drayton Valley's zero-fee initiative is just in its early stages. So the first cohort of about 20 students began their programs in 2019. And programs are currently offered in business administration, healthcare aid, technology and artificial intelligence, and aesthetics. And they're offered through partnerships with several post-secondaries across Alberta. But courses are delivered at Drayton Valley's Clean Energy Technology Centre, which is meant to attract and help keep students in the community. And future programming is being explored in renewable energy, early learning and childcare, and cannabis, as well as some other areas. So how do we think that zero-fee tuition can contribute to creating a more inclusive and resilient economy? So one way is through increased access to educational opportunities and greater educational attainment. Drayton Valley's post-secondary completion rate is about 36% for people aged 25 to 64. This is much lower than the 50% of Albertans who've completed post-secondary and the 54% of Canadians. But as jobs in oil and gas become more scarce, whether that's due to downturns in oil prices or to eventual transitions to different forms of energy, there will be fewer opportunities that people can access directly from high school as they have in the past. So greater post-secondary completion can help ensure that people have the skills and education needed for employment in other types of industries. And by decreasing economic barriers to accessing education, zero-fee is particularly important for creating opportunities for people from marginalized communities. Of course, complementary to education and skill development is job creation. So by working with employers to understand the skills that they need and by training that workforce, zero-fee education has the potential to create jobs and even build up new industries to help diversify the economy. For example, healthcare is one of the sectors expected to show huge growth in Canada over the coming years, especially as our population ages. And Drayton Valley has several seniors facilities, a hospital, and a new seniors care facility. So by training healthcare aides, the zero-fee program can help to create employment pathways for students that are tailored to the growing needs and opportunities in the community. And zero-fee itself can help build up education as an important economic sector, such as by creating employment opportunities for instructors and administrators. And then thinking of community economic impacts, by offering programs in Drayton Valley to attract and keep students and their families in the community, ZeroFee has the potential to increase investment in the local community through spending as well. And research from Invercargill and a handful of similar initiatives in the United States support several of these outcomes, but we're excited to explore how this unfolds specifically in Drayton Valley and the impact on the community there. One of the things that really struck us from our very first meetings with the town of Drayton Valley is just how complex developing and ultimately sustaining a program like ZeroFee is. So this isn't just something that can be owned and operated by the town, but it intersects with every sector in the community, and it relies on engaging stakeholders with diverse motivations and interests. So one of the first things we did as a team was try to map out what the system looks like, and we came up with something like the diagram I have here. So of course, education is crucial, both in terms of local high schools and partnerships with post-secondary institutions who deliver the programming, but employers and industry also play a really vital role in driving the skills and competencies needed, creating employment pathways for students, and also helping to fund the program. Government is another key sector, so the Municipal Town Council has been working within and attempting to influence provincial policies around post-secondary partnerships with rural communities. And community organizations have also helped to fund the program as well as advocate for its importance. We're still in the early stages of our research, but already some major learnings are emerging around the elements needed for an initiative of this magnitude to be successful. So as the system diagram illustrated, there's really no understating the importance of strong partnerships. However, the challenge lies in trying to tie together all of these disparate sectors, especially when education is often perceived as so siloed. And especially when you're trying to do something so radical and such a transformation of what is the norm in a community, there's a lot of work that needs to go into targeting messaging to different audiences so that everyone can find value in the program and envision their active role in that system. And this idea of partnership leads into my second point, which is building employment pathways to good jobs. So to make ZeroFee successful, there is a need for a dual focus. On the one hand, building up a strong educational ecosystem, but then at the same time, building partnerships with local employers and industry to ensure that there are jobs in the community for graduates to move into. If those jobs don't exist locally, we'll just continue to see that brain drain from rural communities to urban areas. And there's also this enormous challenge that many of the in-demand jobs that were identified as needs and in growth areas by the community, particularly care work in feminized industries like healthcare, early childhood education, and personal services tend to be lower paying jobs. So if we're trying to work towards an inclusive economy, there needs to be a recognition that these jobs often don't provide a livable wage. And we need to be engaging with much larger conversations at the provincial and even federal levels about how these jobs are compensated. And lastly, sustainability is hugely important to this work. So while we have funding for 2 years of the research, we know that 2 years isn't enough time to transform an economy. So getting to community impact is messy, it's non-linear, and practitioners need the time to adapt and iterate on models in response to evolving community realities. ZeroFee in Drayton Valley is currently funded through a municipal commitment, but the goal is to create sustainability through sources such as community stakeholders and international student enrollment. However, local employers and community groups who often want to see evidence of program sustainability before committing that funding creates a sort of chicken and egg scenario. Sustainability can also be threatened by shifting political realities, such as changes to provincial funding models and municipal leadership that we're expecting to encounter in the coming months. So our research is really just beginning, and we're excited to continue to share learnings from our work over the next couple of years. So as we continue to explore the idea of ZeroFee as part of this interconnected system, we'll be connecting with people from all of those different nodes to try to understand things like stakeholders' motivation for involvement, their role in the system, and how we can strengthen those connections. We'll also be diving into how ZeroFee is impacting the community from economic and social lenses. So for example, we want to look at how the economic impacts for students in terms of employment and job quality, as well as social impacts like community belonging and hope. And that leads to a question that drives a lot of our work and that I want to leave you with today, which is how can a rural community create hope for its citizens to imagine a new economic future? So thank you so much for listening to my presentation today, and I hope to connect with you more in the breakout sessions. Thank you.